Okay, I want to speak a little bit about the subject of misogyny, specifically misogyny in this video, um, and the fact that, in my view, it is a problem. Okay, firstly, I want to make it clear this is in no way a pro-feminist video, and certainly if people have seen my previous videos on the subject of feminism, you would know that my position is quite clear on that. I remain very critical of many aspects of modern Western feminism. I still think it is a divisive movement. I still think it is a hypocritical movement in many ways. There's many examples I can put forward as representative of that problem. And I certainly don't describe myself as a feminist. I think feminism is more negative than it is positive. But something I have noticed is that a lot of critics of feminism, or let's put it another way, a lot of people who would be forcefully anti-feminist and would be happy to describe themselves as such, actually seem to take the other extreme of ignoring the fact that there are actually women's issues out there. Now, what I've always tried to do in my videos about feminism is be quite objective in my outlook. So yes, I've quite strong views against the things I've already mentioned, and I haven't changed my position on that at all. Feminism still very much frustrates me. I still think that it's more negative than positive, but that doesn't mean that every single thing they say is wrong. It doesn't mean that there are not some issues that are valid points of concern. Now, one of them is misogyny. Let me be clear about this. Misogyny, by definition, means hatred of women or girls. That's what it means. So the term is sometimes used to cover sexism or inappropriate situations that aren't necessarily based on hatred, but they're still inappropriate. So likewise with the word misandry, that can cover a lot of things that aren't necessarily hatred of men and boys, but cover sexism against men and boys. So these words are loaded words. But basically, let's just say for a second we do use the word misogyny. I have personally seen it. I've seen it on some MRA sites, men's rights activist sites, and I have to emphasize this is not the general picture of men's rights activists, but there is quite a vocal minority who, in my view, make their movement look bad. I say their movement because, like I've expressed in a previous video, I'm not a masculist or an MRA, although I would support a lot of their objectives. The problem is a lot of anti-feminist men don't sort of counter feminism with valid arguments, and believe me, there are plenty of valid arguments to be made against feminism the way it is. I mean, for one thing, I deeply resent feminism arrogantly saying that you have to agree with it, otherwise you're anti-woman and you're pro-misogyny, or if you take issue with feminism then you want to hold women back and this sort of stuff. Rubbish. But having said that, I do sometimes come across opinions that are just utterly wrong, and you can't justify them. Some examples would be, say you have an outspoken feminist who's come up with a statement, and you know, we know what they're like. They're provocative, they slander men. Yes, it's frustrating, I get that. But why oh why do some guys then have to respond by coming out with really disgusting sort of attacks on that person? Why not just ignore her, or make adult points to counter her arguments, instead of coming out with these crude, which are genuinely sexist comments? Things like, oh, get back to your kitchen, or I've seen comments like, we hope you get raped, or someone should come and stick this up your feminist, and then the C word. I'm not going to say it, but you get the idea. This sort of thing will do absolutely nothing to counter the problems of feminism. Nothing. All it will do is fuel feminist arguments about there being these bitter men out there who hate women. And the truth is, I think some masculists do hate women, just as some feminists genuinely hate men. There are some masculists out there, I really do get the impression they hate women. There was a guy I quoted in the video as to why I'm not a masculist, and to me they're just as narrow-minded, because if you argue with a masculist in any way, they'll automatically pigeonhole you as a white knight, which is their word for describing any man who they perceive to be pro-feminist. Now that's just ridiculous. I actually do support a lot of masculist objectives. I just don't believe in gender-specific movements in the Western context, because I believe they're far more divisive than they are progressive. So those of us who are critical of feminism, one point we always need to acknowledge is that there are issues impacting women. Now, of course, you can argue there's a lot of sexism against men, but I don't want to mention that in this video simply because I've already covered it in other videos. This is a specific video about the specific problem of misogyny. And the truth is, there are guys out there who don't respect women. They don't. Now, we've all heard the phrase, real men respect women. And whilst it sounds a bit puritanical and overused sometimes, I can understand the basis for it, because there are men out there who just don't. Who genuinely look down on women, who genuinely don't believe in equal opportunities. I'm not talking about results or quotas, I'm talking about actual opportunities. And who basically just have a bad attitude towards women. And they make sexually inappropriate statements that just... Don't get me wrong, I'm red-blooded like any other man. Of course I'm going to look at a sexy girl, of course I like female sexuality. But I think an adult man can control himself and express that in a way that is much healthier without making a woman feel uncomfortable. Not long ago I came across a guy in a pub who was boasting about gangbanging. Now, it's not to say that we'd actually do it, but even the fact that that sort of guy thinks something like that is funny, it's fucked up. So, unfortunately, there are men out there who take this attitude, and they make other men look bad. It's not that it's our fault, but for those of us who take issue with feminism, we, at the very least, should acknowledge that this is a problem, and these people do exist. And if we're not going to confront them directly, at the very least, we should acknowledge there's a problem. I mean, imagine if that was your girlfriend or your sister or your mother they were talking about. It's just not right. So adult men should be able to control themselves and respect women. That's not the same as being subservient to women. And it's not about female privilege. The respect goes both ways. Adult women should respect men as well. Real women should respect men. It works both ways. But basically the point I'm making is adults. It's a bit like idiots who have to use race as a way to attack someone. To me, they've automatically lost argument if they bring race into it. Likewise, someone who brings gender into it automatically loses the argument. So if some bitter feminist comes out with, oh, you men are all da-da-da, she's lost the argument. If a masculist comes out with, all women are da-da-da, he's lost the argument. You could maybe talk about certain trends and problems within groups of people, but to generalise in that way is utterly counterproductive. So all I'm saying is that this is a problem. That doesn't mean there aren't men's issues out there. It doesn't mean that those issues shouldn't be spoken about. Of course they should. They should get a lot more attention. All I'm saying is you cannot counter feminism by thinking that sexism against women is funny or trying to trivialise it. And I have come across men who think that rape is a trivial matter. It's not. It damages a victim for life. It's not a trivial matter at all. And we as men, as decent human beings, we should be condemning that and saying, look, rape is a heinous crime. There's no excuses for it. So I am here saying, not as a feminist, not as a masculist, but as a human being, that we should just be mature and not resort to this petty, inappropriate sort of language and attitude. I love women. And if a friend of mine was harassed by a guy in that sort of way, I would take issue with that man. Not to be bravado, not to be a white knight, but because it's simply the right thing to do. And likewise, I would expect my female friends, if some bitter feminists had a go at me, I'd expect them to stand up for me as well. So it works both ways. Okay, thank you for watching.